Hey. Really the only thing that gon' be normal is distribution. Normal folks gon' infuse some. Optimize your lineups and you feed the rest, you mute them. Turning it up, these numbers are loud. Peeping this game from a nimbus is wild. Making it rain. While I embrace all this risk, I'm insane. Talking about that Bestbell, I'm the best rest till into the next world. Guess I got next still. Bestbell, I'm the best rest till into the next world. Guess I got next still.
And welcome to the Bestbell Fantasy Football Podcast and live stream. I'm Bradley Stalder at FF Stalder. We're going to dive into some must-add waiver wire ads. It was an eventful week 3. We saw some absolutely historic performances from the Miami Dolphins. Raheem Mostert, from Devon Achane. Trying to pronounce that correctly. He asked us to not call him Devon Achane. So there we go. Like a ridiculous amount of touchdowns. 8 touchdowns. Okay. 4 from each of them. It was beautiful. If you drafted in best ball, investing in the Miami Dolphins was the smash play. This was the play. Drafting Mostert, drafting Jeff Wilson, even though, Wilson's on IR, drafting Achane. This was the way. This was what was going to bring us fantasy goodness, fantasy gold. This was going to bring us victory. And then you have the Keenan Allen spike week, right? You have some others that absolutely go nuclear during these weeks. Like, Justin Jefferson absolutely crushes. We have some others who also, your Tyreek Hills naturally hit. Your Devontae Adams goes off. I mean, yes, we are here for all of this scoring. Among quarterbacks, Tua led the way. Kirk Cousins was quarterback 2 on the week. Herbert 3. Andy Dalton 4. Of course, Andy Dalton would be 4. Mahomes 5. CJ Stroud 6. Lamar Jackson 7. Among running backs, it was Achane, and then Mostert, and then Kenneth Walker, and then Zach Moss at 4th. Christian McCaffrey 5th. James Conner 6th. And Jerome Ford finishes as 7th because he caught a touchdown as well. 2 touchdowns for Jerome Ford. Keenan Allen, your wide receiver 1 on the week. This is barring, of course, Monday Night Football and those results. Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, Tank Dell, Adam Thielen, Mike Williams, who is out for the season with a torn ACL. So that's definitely going to be, something that we're watching is who's going to be the play, right? Who's going to be the wide receiver that takes over? And some may say it's Quentin Johnson, but I am not convinced that it's Quentin Johnson. In fact, we could be even more concerned that it's not Quentin Johnson, and in fact, it's Josh Palmer, which is both an indictment of Quentin Johnston and an indictment of Josh Palmer as well, because we're going to see Josh Palmer probably work ahead of Quentin Johnston. We're going to get more into some of these waiver wire pickups, but I do want to take a moment and just say that things are going to get a little crazy, and it's okay. It is okay that we are Bijan Robinson on the season is the running back 11. That is okay for us for right now, because all things being equal, it's going to work itself out. We're going to be able to see that some of these big time players will regress back to the mean. We'll see some of our, Diggs finished wide receiver 13 in the week. Olave finished 14. Those are fine. But Rondell Moore finishing 17th on the week, we love to see that. Romo Dubs at 19th on the week. Pittman at 21st. We're going to hit on some more of these waiver wire pickups. Rondell Moore is definitely someone we should be considering. He's not going to be one I'm going to dive deep into, but we should be strongly considering. Okay. Jalen Hurts just rushed for a touchdown Monday Night Football. Let's go. In the meantime, our number 1 tight end on the week is Sam Laporta. Number 2, Pharaoh Brown. 3 was Kelsey. 4 was Kittle. 5 was Donald Parham. And then Hawkinson, and then Ingram. So pretty chalky at the top. Laporta, certainly a 30-something% target share. You're probably starting Laporta the rest of the way as a mid-pack tight end 1. I don't know how you can really move away from him. You have to start Laporta over Freiermuth. You have to start Laporta over Evan Ingram. Start Laporta over Kyle Pitts pretty easily. Yeah, I think those are over Dallas Goedert. Yeah, I think Laporta over Dallas Goedert for what we've seen so far. That's kind of wild to think, but I think we are starting Laporta over even Darren Waller. We need to see it from Waller. Waller's been, one of the top receiving tight ends in terms of yardage, but he's definitely not right. He's definitely not fully healthy. And until we see it from Waller, we can peg in a 20% plus target share for Sam Laporta pretty easily. So we need to be, if he's available in your lineup, there are only a handful of tight ends that you should be starting over Sam Laporta. Chevy 4x4 lost Big Mike. I'm sorry. Sitting with number 1 waiver claim. Achan is owned. Yes. So we're going to get into some of these fantasy football waiver wire pickup plays. Yeah, for sure. Is Tank Dell worth my number 1? Well, I'll talk about, the order in which I'd have them, or rough order, depending upon what you need, etc. But a general order of how I would want them. So let's get into it. Obviously, Sam Laporta, I'm assuming that he's rostered in every league, but if he's not, you should prioritize him. Okay, the first is, of course, your very obvious Devon Achan, rostered in 28% of leagues. He scored 51.3 fantasy points in week 3, 18 for 203. He had 2 rushing touchdowns, 11.3 yards per carry. He had 4 catches, 30 yards, 2 touchdowns. And how should we value him as a running back moving forward? I mean, obviously, we're not going to be putting him, top 10, top 5 or whatever, but he definitely is a consideration for a flex play regularly. And we've seen, the spike week upside. It seemed like, yes, the Miami Dolphins didn't want to run up the score, but at the same time, they were up by 49, right? They scored 49, and then it was the pick 6, and then a couple other busted plays. It was the Denver Broncos' fault that it got to 70. It was not Miami running up the scoreboard or any baloney like that. No. That is ridiculous. Because there was reports out that Miami was running up the score. No, they weren't. But Devon Achan right now, among all running backs, has the highest PFF rush grade ahead of Raheem Mostert. That's pretty wild. You've got the highest graded running back, Devon Achan, right there. 10.9 yards per carry, 6 yards after contact per attempt, only behind other running back who torched the Denver Broncos, and it wasn't Raheem Mostert. It was, in fact, Chris Brooks. So I don't anticipate games getting out of hand again like this, but it is a sign or an indication that you wanted pieces of this Miami Dolphins offense. That's why I was drafting a lot of Tua, drafting a lot of Jalen Waddle, drafting a lot of Tyreek Hill ahead of Cooper Kupp. That was the smart move. That was the safe move. We wanted Cooper Kupp. We saw what he could do upside wise, but you didn't have the risk with Tyreek Hill. You didn't have the risk of the long-term injury. So with all that being said, you wanted to be throwing some Devon Achane into your, mixing him into your Miami stacks, into that Miami game environment. So when we get into the end of the year, we've got Devon Achane and we've got Raheem Mostert. We've got these players, and Jeff Wilson will be back sometime. But, I mean, it's going to be hard, I think, for the Miami Dolphins to move away from just rotating through Mostert and Achane, right? I mean, how could they not? So we like this. We like he is the number one priority ad for the week. This was a player that I'm pretty sure I put in that we wanted to get in week 1. This was a player we wanted week 1, pick him up. He's going to absolutely annihilate. And he didn't play. And this was the perfect stash time, right? There were times where people were passing Devon Achane in the hundreds, right, of ADP. So, sometimes you want to, this was a rookie ambiguity skill set discount scenario where it just made sense that Devon Achane, who was a very skilled running back, an SEC running back, played very well against top-notch defenses and ended up crushing, right? And yes, he's going to be on benches. He's going to be starting, for us in our fantasy lineups pretty comfortably. So I'd probably put him, between 12 and 18. I wouldn't get carried away, but at the same time, we'd rather see this than not, right? It immediately catapults Achane into top 5 fantasy points per game on the season. And the efficiency metrics were absolutely there for Achane in week number 3. So pick up Devon Achane. He is, I mean, how could you not? Can't leave. Even if you're like, this is a fluke, Stalder. This is a fluke. I don't believe it. At least make your teammates or league mates outbid you for Achane, right? At least keep them honest, even if you don't believe it. At least keep them honest. But Achane has given us every reason to believe that he is the real deal. So go ahead. I mean, if you want to even make some trades for Devon Achane, I'm sure that people will try to drive up the price. It may very well be worth it because the Miami Dolphins are a team that has within its range of outcomes leading the entire NFL in points. With Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle was even out for this game, right? Jalen Waddle was out for this game. Devon Achane, 2 receiving touchdowns. We love to see it. We got a comment. It feels like he's a one-time hitter. Well, let me say 2 things that can be true at the same time. He won't again match the 55 fantasy points that he scored. But let's look at what he did last year in college, right? Last year for Texas A&M, he ran for over 1,100 yards on 196 carries, 5.6 yards per attempt. He had an 89 rushing grade. He had 91 rushing grade back in 2021, an 86 rushing grade back in 2020, 3.64 and 3.6 yards after contact per attempt. Very respectable. I mean, he plays against Ole Miss, 138 rushing yards. Plays against LSU, 215 rushing yards. Plays against Arkansas, 159 rushing yards. Right? He played against quality competition. Played against Florida, 122 rushing yards. Played against quality competition and just lit them up. So also for a guy, he in his final season had 4 different games of at least 6 targets. So you could say, he's one-time hitter. He's not going to hit 55 points again. That may be true. But for him to have spike weeks in this team, in this environment, I mean, Raheem Mostert is 32 years old. Jeff Wilson is 28 years old. So you've got a young speed back, 4.32 speed, who has proven production. I mean, how can coaches not lean on a player like they're not going to move away from Devon Achane? That just doesn't make sense. And while he may not get 55, like, can he get 15, 20 points? Yeah, he can be a top 12 running back rest of the way, buoyed by this 55 pointer. He can be top 15, top 18, for rest of season and still end up being in the top 10 in fantasy points per game. So trilingual kid, I think it's going to be hard for the coaching staff for the Dolphins to move away from Devon Achane, and I think it's going to be hard for fantasy managers to move away from him again, even if he has bust games or even if he has games that let you down a little bit. It's clear that they're going to use him in the passing game, in the running game, and that there's an immediate trust right now because of his performance against the Denver Broncos. Let's keep it moving, though. Let's keep it moving. Tank Dell is our number 2 priority this week. Tank Dell crushed, and he was a player that I recommended last week, and people were like, Bradley, why are you recommending Tank Dell in preparation for week 3? I said Tank Dell is an undersized wide receiver who's winning. That's the thing, is Tank Dell is winning. He's playing really well, 77.5 PFF grade. Tank Dell in this game, 5 catches, 145 yards. Yes, he had the big catch, there's 68 yards or so, but came down with the touchdown. Ran 26 routes, 100% route participation, and mostly playing once again on the outside. This is the wild thing about Tank Dell, playing 77% of his snaps out wide, only 23% in the slot. This is a guy who's 5'8", 165, winning on the outside. He's a special dude. So how can we be moving away from Tank Dell when 7 targets, 5 receptions, 145 yards, 25.5 fantasy points? This is not a part-time player, right? 84% of the routes in the game he ran. 56% of his team's air yards is nothing to scoff at either. I mean, that's phenomenal. And he came down with that big 60-plus yard touchdown. The Texans are going to try that with quarterback CJ Stroud. They're going to try to look deep for Tank Dell. And when he's winning deep, this is great. And Stroud is looking good. We'll talk about CJ Stroud a little bit later. But, I mean, Tank Dell only rostered in 27% of leagues. He led the Texans in targets in both week 2 and week 3. He's finished top 20 each of the last 2 weeks and 22+% routes in both games, like target percentage. So we're here. We're here for Tank Dell. He reminds me a little bit of, who are some of the smaller receivers that have won? I know Lockett is a little bit bigger, but I think a Lockett, a smaller Tyler Lockett who just finds ways to win is an interesting comp for Tank Dell in like that style of play. He just finds ways to win. And that's why we want to be getting Tank Dell even into a flex considerations. So I think that they torched the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Houston Texans did. And why would we move away from that? I don't think I would. And I don't think you should as fantasy managers either. So continue to plug Tank Dell in and see what happens. CJ Stroud is willing to look his way, willing to target Tank Dell. This is a day 2 wide receiver that the Texans handpicked to be the guy for CJ Stroud. So let's also handpick Tank Dell for our fantasy teams. If I'm prioritizing a tight end not named Sam Laporta, it's Luke Musgrave. Musgrave ran a team-high 86% of routes for Green Bay. He had 8 targets, nearly 11 fantasy points. And if there are reliable options in this offense for Green Bay, it's Luke Musgrave, it's Jaden Reed. Romeo Doubs has played admirably for sure. And Musgrave, 11 catches on the season, 124 yards, 15 targets. He's averaged 5 targets per game as a rookie tight end. Okay, yeah, give me some Luke Musgrave. who's running the most pass routes and has the most receiving routes among all players on the Green Bay Packers. So he is out there all the time. Yeah, how can you argue with 5 targets from a tight end? He just hasn't fallen in the end zone, which is why his fantasy points per game isn't higher. But we're here for that. We're here for a little bit of touchdown regression. The Green Bay Packers face the Detroit Lions on Thursday, and so the Lions have been susceptible in the past to giving up fantasy points. And if Luke Musgrave is being used near the goal line, we could see some Musgrave touchdowns in Thursday for the Packers. So go Pack go. I don't know if y'all can tell all my Packer stuff behind me, but nevertheless, Luke Musgrave is a priority add as a high-end tight end too, with touchdown variance coming his way. So let's get Luke Musgrave on our teams, especially given we don't know if Christian Watson is going to be available for week number 4. He was a late scratch. Aaron Jones should be good to go because it's clear A.J. Dillon is not playing well. Something is just not right with A.J. Dillon. So, yeah, we need to stay away from A.J. Dillon moving forward and lean instead into Luke Musgrave. Another Green Bay Packers player we should be targeting is Jayden Reed. So Jayden Reed, 21% target share, 148 receiving yards, 16.4 yards per reception. He has 2 touchdowns on the season, 11.8 fantasy points per game. He is second on the Packers in terms of receiving grade, only behind Romeo Doubs. And he is catching up with Doubs in terms of pass snaps. In fact, Jayden Reed played more than twice as much as he did in week number 2. In week 3 for 63. He didn't have the touchdown, which was a little bit of concern. But if Christian Watson is once again not available in a game that's probably going to be a shootout with the Detroit Lions, yeah, give me Jayden Reed as a flex consideration. We like it. He got 7 targets in this game. Yeah, he didn't come down with a lot of them, but he's being used in the slot and he's being used deep. 72% of his snaps are coming out of the slot. And we like that Jayden Reed is being used a lot more now. It was clear the jump from week 2 to week 3 for the second round pick, the 4.45 40-yard dash, former Michigan State wide receiver. We want to be finding ways to plug in Jayden Reed into our lineup for Thursday. Okay. Thoughts on Matt Breida? Fernando Garate. Thanks for tuning in. If you guys are new and you haven't, subscribed to my channel, like hit the smash the subscribe button. Appreciate y'all jumping in. Fernando, thoughts on Matt Breida? Breida is bad. He's really bad. He's a player that I'm not looking to start, even though we got news that Saquon Barkley is expected to miss. Saquon Barkley is expected to miss 2-3 more weeks. Breida hit 10 or 11 fantasy points in this game because he fell in the end zone. He had 3 or 4 catches for less than 20 total yards. And yes, I know it's tough defense, 49ers, blah, blah, blah. So maybe his ceiling is 13 points. Are we really going to lean into, you must be in dire straits to be considering starting Matt Breida. Breida is not particularly good. His best days are behind him. He's 28 and a half years old. He's not a player that I'm looking to start. Like, hopefully you didn't drop Devon Achane for Matt Breida. That probably would really hurt your soul if that happened. But yeah, we're not in on Matt Breida. Just continue to avoid that New York Giants offense. Gary Brightwell was also very heavily involved. Like, we know Matt Breida isn't very good. Gary Brightwell is also probably not very good. I'm just avoiding Giants in their backfield moving forward. A wide receiver, another second-round wide receiver that you need to be in on is Marvin Mims Jr. And this is a player, oh boy, look out. I have drafted a lot of Marvin Mims in best ball, so I have a double-digit share, in the later rounds. But he's averaging, this is Marvin Mims, is averaging 28.6 yards per touch, 429 total yards. He has 15 total receptions and rushes and returns, all three of those, 195 receiving yards, nearly 28 yards per reception. He has 5 targets of 20 or more air yards, and he averages nearly 25 air yards per target, 7.5 yards per route. And that leads his entire team. It leads the Broncos in all of those categories. He only has 9 targets, and 5 of those are 20 or more air yards. This is a big time player. Here's the issue. 28% route participation is not going to get it done for fantasy. Like, he's dependent upon these big plays because he is not getting used very much. 28% route participation, 46% target per route is phenomenal. When he is on the field, he's a situational usage guy. It's almost like if you pulled a third down back into the backfield, they're going to pass. Well, if Marvin Mims is in the lineup, Marvin Mims is going to be targeted because he's really good. He has a 32% air yard share, and he has 3 catches for 73 yards on 5 targets. Oh yeah, and by the way, they're trusting him on special teams too. And how do we know that? He contributed in special teams, and it showed up for fantasy. He returned a 99-yard kick return for a touchdown. If he ever usurps Jerry Jeudy or Courtland Sutton, we're looking at a Marvin Mims massive breakout. And you would rather have this guy stashed on your bench than on someone else's bench. When we get to the fantasy playoffs, this is a player the Broncos would probably get in some shootouts. I mean, it's surprising that they weren't able to put up a few more points on the Dolphins, given the 50-point differential, the 70-20 routing. You'd expect that Marvin Mims would, get targeted a little more, but he did have that big touchdown kick return. So Marvin Mims, player you need to be picking up off the waiver wire. He's got more upside than Jaden Reed, but Jaden Reed is more startable right now. And I would say long-term, Marvin Mims has a higher upside than Tank Dell, who I have prioritized over Mims at this point, because Dell is contributing immediately and a full-time player. But Mims, his ceiling is massive. It's absolutely massive. So we need to be in on Marvin Mims, getting him on our rosters. Okay, let's keep her moving. Tyjae Spears. That's right. That's how it's pronounced. Tyjae Spears. Not Ty J. Tyjae Spears. We knew that Derrick Henry was coming into this game questionable. He didn't practice very much. He was good to go. But the Cleveland Browns defense is an auto bench nearly, because how are they going to run against him? Schwartz has done an amazing job. The defensive coordinator over there has done an amazing job of shutting down opposing offenses. The Browns lead the NFL in negative EPA, defensive EPA. So it's wild. We also can recognize that Derrick Henry, as I said, he was not right. And this is indicated through Tyjae Spears's snap percentage. Spears played 57% of snaps. Derrick Henry only played 36. And while it wasn't pretty for Spears, Spears still is 5th among all running backs in terms of PFF rush grade. He had 4 rushes for 6 yards in yesterday's game against Cleveland. But in the previous games, 8 for 49 and 3 for 27. So I think they just chalked this up to Oh, it was a bad game against Cleveland. That's fine. But Spears is the handcuff you want to be picking up now before your league mates do. Pick him up. And if Derrick Henry suffers a setback, or if they say, you know what, Tennessee, we want to just see if Derrick Henry can just need another week to get right, whatever, Tyzee Spears is a top 12 running back in terms of fantasy if Derrick Henry sits. We love him as a handcuff. He is not just your Jerome Ford, and Jerome Ford had, some nice 2 touchdowns in this game despite not being very efficient. Tyzee Spears, on the other hand, uber efficiency and the type of player that you want on your fantasy team so that if anything happens to Derrick Henry, you are ready to roll, even if Henry is not on your team. The next player that we want to be targeting is Joshua Palmer. And this is coming in the wake of the news that Mike Williams is out for the season due to a torn ACL. It's just disastrous for Mike Williams. He's missed a couple seasons with big injuries, and unfortunately, this is going to be one of those seasons. Josh Palmer, in 3 games last year without Mike Williams and with Keenan Allen, these were his lines: 8 for 106 and 2 touchdowns, 5 for 56, and 7 for 60. 28 targets over 3 games. You can do the math. That's between 9 and 10 targets per game. And with Austin Eckler maybe missing this game, week 4 as well, we will see. We don't know about Eckler's status, but we're talking Josh Palmer can be a pretty straightforward top 24 wide receiver in terms of volume. There aren't many handcuff wide receivers in the NFL. Josh Palmer is one of those volume-based, get him the volume and he'll be okay-ish. He's not a great wide receiver when you look at yards per route run, when you look at PFF receiving grade, but the pass volume is enough for Josh Palmer to be relevant and a flex consideration moving forward, even with Keenan Allen dominating. We expect Keenan Allen's going to get a bump. We expect other Chargers to get bumps in this offense, Josh Palmer included. You may be wondering, what about Quentin Johnston? I have my concerns about Quentin Johnston. I need to stay on brand. As one of the analysts at Player Profiler, we have a brand to maintain, and that is including hatred for Quentin Johnston. Now, we know Josh Palmer is meh, but we also have not seen anything in the preseason or at the NFL level that indicates that Quentin Johnston could step in and usurp Joshua Palmer. If you remember in the preseason, Quentin Johnston declared himself the wide receiver 3, but there was no report that he was actually the wide receiver 3. And then it comes out at the end of the preseason, Josh Palmer's playing comfortably ahead of Quentin Johnston. Well, okay. It's probably because Palmer knows what he's doing. He was an okay route runner. Not, as I said, not super efficient. Couldn't access super spike weeks on the reg, even as a handcuff, which is what you would expect from that's why I like the parallel of Josh Palmer being the Jerome Ford equivalent. Nothing special, but he's going to get the volume to be a flex consideration moving forward. So Josh Palmer had 7 targets in this game that Mike Williams had to leave early, 4 receptions, 66 yards, and a touchdown. So 4 for 66. I mean, you'll take 10 points in your fantasy leagues plus the possibility of a touchdown. Yeah, Josh Palmer probably rostered in your league. If you are getting decimated at the wide receiver position, you need some depth, you need someone with a pulse, Joshua Palmer is a consideration. If you want one more wide receiver, I'm going to give you one more wide receiver for tonight, and that's Josh Downs, slot wide receiver for the Indianapolis Colts. And Downs was a player I was banging the drum for in the offseason. I was hoping that he would, take over a little bit more. And, he is starting to make some moves here. Josh Downs, 15 catches and 21 targets through the first 3 games. He's averaged 40 yards per game so far. 66 PFF receiving grade. Nothing special on that front in the efficiency. In the efficiency side, he is playing primarily out of the slot, but we don't have any update about Anthony Richardson. We will see if he is going to be available. But Josh Downs in this game, 8 for 57, 11 targets out of the slot against Baltimore. And Josh Downs is taking over this number 2 role, which is what I'd hoped he would do over Alec Pierce. 84% route participation, 21% air yard share, 13.7 fantasy points, and a 29% target share. We like that for Josh Downs. And if you also need a player with a pulse, who has a pulse, only rostered in less than 3% of leagues, Josh Downs for the Indianapolis Colts. And even if Anthony Richardson is back out there, I mean, Downs had 5 targets in both of the Anthony Richardson games. But if Minshew continues to start, Downs, as we saw, jumped up significantly in the targets. And he's playing full complement of snaps, 38 snaps in week 1, 28 in week 2, and 41 in week 3. So clearly playing a significant role. And he has, the third most snaps among wide receivers. Alec Pierce only 6 for 76 on the season. That's not going to get it done for fantasy for you. So at least take some shots on Josh Downs, because we know Josh Downs produced in college, early declare, and it may have taken him a little bit to acclimate to the NFL, but he's starting to really carve out a role. We like Josh Downs as a deeper league wide receiver 4 or 5. Would you rather have Reed, Doubs, or Palmer? Yeah, so I think Christian Watson does come back very soon. He may not be back Thursday. If he is not back on Thursday, give me a Romeo Doubs over all 3 of these. If Christian Watson is back, I think that does impact both of the Packers pretty significantly. So let's go with Palmer if Christian Watson is back, but I'll go with Doubs if Christian Watson is out. Chevy 4x4 thoughts on Zeke. He is on waivers. He doesn't excite me, but he could be sneaky. May Uncle Bill favor Zeke over Ramondre. Yeah, Ezekiel Elliott had a pretty sneaky game in week number 3. Okay. Looking at what he did, 16 carries, 80 yards, a 67 rush grade, and on the season a 71.6 rush grade. Like, his yards after contact isn't great, but he's gotten some interesting volume, 28 carries over the course of the 3 games, so almost 10 carries per game. And if Ramondre continues to, go through his struggles, because Zeke has a better PFF rush grade, he has better yards after contact per attempt, better yards per attempt. Zeke has almost the same. Ezekiel Elliott has 12 fewer rushing yards on 18 fewer attempts than Ramondre Stevenson. And yes, Zeke has had a fumble on the year, but I don't think that's going to deter Bill Belichick from moving away from him, especially given in week 3 handling 15 plus touches. So this was my fear about Ramondre Stevenson. This was my fear about round 2, 3 of Ramondre, was that once we saw Ezekiel Elliott sign, that he was around 5 plus. And then it looks like Ramondre is going to be, he's trending toward bust territory at this point. I mean, yes, we saw 19 carries against the Jets, but 59 yards. And then the calling card for Ramondre Stevenson, remember, are these targets. He's had 3 targets in each of the last 2 games. Is it just Ezekiel Elliott? I mean, you're like, oh, it's the Jets and Miami. You need Ramondre Stevenson to be heavily involved in the passing game against these 2 teams. So I think it's frustrating for fantasy managers who are depending upon Ramondre Stevenson to be the guy, and he's not been the guy so far. Ramondre might be one of the bigger busts in the first 3 rounds. that there's not injury in his way, at least that we know of. So this is a major concern for Ramondre Stevenson moving forward. And if fantasy analysts are telling you, oh, it's not a major concern, like they're delusional. Like this is a delusion that you need to be avoiding. Is we have warning signs about Ramondre Stevenson through the first 3 weeks. He's getting the majority of touches, but he's not doing a lot with them. Is there a lingering injury? Is there something else going on? We don't know. So we have to be a little bit more concerned with with Ramondre Stevenson, given how Ezekiel Elliott he's just played better with his touches. All right. Let's answer a couple more questions, and then we will get into my last waiver wire priority ad. ASDF Hop, is a Chan a must add? Absolutely, he's a must add. He is absolutely a must add. Yes. 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 I don't want to claim him because I might lose priority. Pick him up and force someone else. Look, how often are you going to be able to get a player who has a 55 point, score on his scorecard? You can't retro those points for sure, but you also want a running back who's trusted by his coaching staff to handle a significant workload even later into the game, and to have the breakaway speed. His PFF rush grade is the highest among all running backs so far. Yards after contact per attempt is second highest. Chan is playing very well through the first 2 games. So yeah, let's add him. We know that Miami's going to score a lot of points. It may not be 70 every week, goodness gracious, but it's going to be, in the 30 plus points every week. And if your team is scoring 30 points, Chan is probably involved significantly in that game plan. So yes, we want Chan. Add him. He is a number 1 priority add, even using our priority waiver bids. Okay. So there we go. The last player that I'm going to talk about here until we get to our final must add is DJ Chark. Right. DJ Chark missed week 1, only played 27 pass snaps in week 2. 1 target, 1 reception for 15 yards was pretty much a bust. And then in week 3, 4 catches, 86 yards and a touchdown, playing mostly on the outside. He is the big play waiting to happen. He's the home run hitter type for this Carolina offense. Only 4 receptions, but 10 targets. So it's clear that Andy Dalton was really trying to get the ball down to him and trying to get big plays. Like DJ Chark profiles as this big play guy. He's 4.3 speed, 6'4", 200. So he's a tall, lanky, small, like he's a tall frame, but he's not hefty. He's not a big bodied, like he's not Mike Evans playing on the outside. He's not a Mike Williams playing on the outside. DJ Chark instead is just like your skinny, tall wide receiver that you're trying to come down with the ball. And unfortunately, as much as we like those spike weeks, and spike plays, it's at a cost. He's not playing very efficiently. A 55.8 receiving grade, 40% catch rate is not going to get it done. So 1.39 yards per route run. Yeah, that's pretty ugly. 65 pass snaps. We like that, but he's boom or bust. And so I think DJ Chark is much better if he was in your best ball leagues, but he's not a target and a very risky. He's a volatile flex play. I would rather have Tank Dell than DJ Chark, just to give you a feel, like significantly Tank Dell over DJ Chark rest of season. Okay, cool. We've got one last player. And I want to make sure that you guys, if you like the content, you found this helpful, make sure you guys are hitting that red subscribe button. I appreciate y'all doing that for sure. Let's talk about our boy, CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud. No interceptions on the season. 4 passing touchdowns. Averaging over 300 yards passing per game. 242 in his debut. 384, and then comes back against Jacksonville, 280. Over 63% completion in each of the games. Yeah. He's been crushing it. So, I mean, CJ Stroud, top 18 quarterback moving forward pretty regularly. It's going to be based on his touchdown equity. But Stroud is proving that he is a massive improvement over Davis Mills. I mean, just against the Jacksonville Jaguars, an 80 pass grade, 3.3% big time throw rate. That's respectable. 78% adjusted completion percentage in week 3. And Stroud, looking at all quarterbacks, I mean, he has 4 touchdowns and no interceptions. Only Justin Herbert has more passing touchdowns with 6 and 0 interceptions. So he's not been turning the ball over, which has been great for the Texans and staying in games. And he's proving that he's a worthy fantasy asset. Typically, we see like a lot of conservative playing from these rookie quarterbacks, these top picks. But no, CJ Stroud, rostered in 15% of leagues. He's now a super flex consideration, a pretty solid super flex consideration in play. Obviously, we're probably not starting him as a top 12. We aren't looking at him that way in terms of week to week starting so far. But you can't ignore that. Looking at what he did, he finished, barring Monday Night Football, he's quarterback 6 on the week. Now, we won't have that confidence of him being a top 10 quarterback week to week. We have Lamar Jackson who finished behind him. We have Josh Allen who finished behind him. Jalen Hurts is still behind him at this point. But can we talk ourselves? Justin Fields had a bad game. Can we talk CJ Stroud into being like a top 15 quarterback on the week and being pretty comfortable with that? Yeah. So high-end quarterback 2 moving forward is how we should value CJ Stroud, given that the offense is moving better than last year. And Tank Dell is there, the trusted wide receiver that you should also be picking up in your fantasy leagues. Yeah, I agree with Jesse. Stroud is a good choice if you missed on Fields. Probably super cheap, probably available in your fantasy leagues. Agree with you, Jesse. I do think better days are ahead for Justin Fields. Fields, looking at week 3. Okay. Looking at just week 3, Justin Fields is tied for 11th in. Oh, nope. I want to sort that here. Justin Fields is 13th in PFF pass grade. So he wasn't terrible, but he also only threw the ball 22 times. That's not going to get it done against the Chiefs when you're down by 30 at halftime. You need to be passing a lot more, and passing to Darnell Mooney, passing to DJ Moore, passing to Roshan Johnson. Those are the plays that you want to be attacking if you are Justin Fields. But there's a significant lack of trust in the coaching staff of Chicago at this point. Seems to be that Chicago hasn't given Fields a fighting chance. Yes, they bring in DJ Moore, but the coaching staff doesn't know how to use Fields, and they don't know how to use DJ Moore. Like, goodness gracious. Yeah, one of the worst picks you could have made was DJ Moore in like round 3 at 3-4 turn with Justin Fields. So, yeah, that was always a bad pick. Nevertheless, so that wraps it up for tonight. A pretty quick waiver wire must add show, but make sure if you guys are new, hit that red subscribe button. You can comment on my videos. I've got some great videos that are regularly put out for y'all throughout the week. Make sure you check them out, share with your friends. If you don't like them, share them with your enemies and tell them that this guy is very smart. And in fact, if you don't think I'm very smart, share it with your enemies. So there you go. Appreciate y'all. My name is Bradley. Till next time, good luck in the fantasy football streets, everyone.
I embrace all this risk, I'm insane. Talking about that Bestbell, I'm the best till into the next world. Guess I got next still. Bestbell, I'm the best till into the next world. Guess I got next still.